Breaking the Cycle to Step Forward. Authentic conversations from lived experience and a professional perspective in overcoming abuse with Chris Tuck and Beverley Ann.
Hello and welcome to Breaking the Cycle to Step Forward. I'm Beverley Ann and I'm with my lovely co-host.
I love the way you say lovely every time. Chris Tuck, everyone. Hello and welcome.
And welcome to this podcast, which is our Have You Got 5 Minutes, our Q&A session. But we're doing it a little bit differently this month. And that's because we've had a question come in asking, what do we do outside of this podcast? And I think it's really good. So we're going to separate it. So this podcast, Chris is actually our guest. We're going to be asking, or I'm going to be asking Chris questions about herself. And she doesn't know what these questions are. We've done it so it's all authentic and, raw and authentic, uncut version, as we always like to do as much as possible. So, Chris, let's go back a little bit in case anybody's coming across this podcast for the first time. Okay, can you just give us, and I know it's very challenging to do it in a quick overview, but for anybody who doesn't know your background, can you just speak very quickly about your childhood, Chris, and your experiences?
Oh, Beverley, what have you unearthed on me? Oh, okay, right. So, snapshot. I'm a survivor of all forms of abuse in childhood, mental abuse, physical abuse, sexual abuse, and neglect. I was also starved in one of the households that I was in. So I was in 3 different households, age 0 to 7 with my mum and dad and my 3 siblings. Then from the age of 7 to 11 with my dad and my stepmum. My dad then got arrested and was put away for child sexual offences. My mum got custody of us through the family court. So between the ages of 11 and just shy of my 16th birthday, I was with my mum and my stepdad, and there was abuse in different forms in every single one of those households. And there was also domestic violence in all 3 of those households. So to cut a long story short, there's layer upon layer of trauma impact because of what I witnessed and because of what I experienced.
Absolutely. And thank you, Chris, because you did do that very quickly. So we're just going to speak here about, people talk a lot about ACEs and trauma. And ACEs, I'm going to say, is adverse childhood experiences. So neglect, abuse, they form part of that. And as you explained, you've lived in 3 different scenarios of families. So with your birth parents being either together or one or the other in those relationships. Yep. And they've always broken down, and there's abuse again on top of those. So these are all part of the ACEs, and they have an impact. And the trauma and the stress. Again, because we want to look at what you're doing now, but what would you say now, Chris, when you look back into your adulthood? So say like from the age of 16, you went and lived on your own.
Yeah.
Okay. If you were talking to somebody else about the impact, what would you say has been the most challenging of the impact for you?
Not knowing that everything that I'd experienced as a child and young person would actually have an impact on me later on in life. Because at the age of 16, I was ashamed of everything that I'd gone through and of who I was as a person, because I didn't know that the shame that belonged to my dad didn't belong to me. So I carried that for a long, long time. Actually, that is one thing that I've carried for most of my adult life, and I only got rid of probably 2 years ago, was the shame that he was a convicted sexual offender. And I got called out in the playground when I think it was year 6, so primary school, year 5, just before you go off to secondary school. when someone sort of like shouted out in the playground, "Oh, your dad's a pedo, your dad's a pedo," and I'm like, I didn't even know what that word meant, and then I felt this almost, I knew it wasn't nice, I knew it wasn't good, I knew it wasn't wholesome, and that day I felt a stain on me as my own character. um and I carried that with me right into adulthood. So what would I say was the most impactful? That was the most impactful because I didn't know that I would have all of this ill health, mental and physical and emotional, from what I'd gone through. And it's the silence that was surrounding all of that. So from the ages of 16 to the age of 30, when I had my breakdown, I didn't know about trauma. I didn't know about impact. It's only because I went through that breakdown, which I now call my breakthrough, that I understood when I looked back and reflected, and when I started looking into the research and the science and reading books and watching webinars and going on courses, finding out about all of this, did I actually go, oh my God, I wish someone had just said to my 16-year-old self, do you know that if you've gone through anything like that, there might be impact, and this is where you go and get help. This is where you go and talk about it. This is where you don't carry all of that guilt and the shame and the blame and the stain of it all. Yeah, that would have just prevented my breakdown completely. It would have prevented it.
Yeah. And let's be honest, it's that drive within you now that's been like, it's the absolute core of you, and it's what drives you forward in everything that you do.
Yeah, it does, Bev. Yeah.
Yeah. And I just wanted, in your words, to get that out to our viewers and listeners so that they can really understand who Chris Tuck is. So,
God, Bev, I'm shaking. I'm shaking. I've got a smile on my face, but my body's telling me something completely different. Yeah, sorry.
You're right. No, don't apologize. And this is a reality. And again, we want people to see the reality. This is what it's all about. So, we often hear as survivors of childhood abuse that, oh, that happened a long time ago. Because do you want to share your age, Chris? I know it's not
I'm
normally
54.
done. You're 54.
54.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So you've carried that shame and guilt around for nearly 50 years of your father's behalf without the other experiences that you've had. And we just want people to see this because you've had lots and lots of help, and you continue to have therapy. It's part of your wellness.
Yeah.
And some people have this idea, oh, that happened a long time ago.
And just that phrase really angers me. And I've had to fight for it in the professional world, where I've had to bring normal everyday people up to the level of understanding that we all have. And that is, just because the events were yesterday or a year ago or 10 years ago, 20, 30 years ago, it doesn't matter. The impact is with you as if it is happening today, especially if you get triggered by different things. So part of that therapy is to try and not get triggered by everyday things that remind you of stuff that you went through years ago, but is held within your body. We all know about the book The Body Keeps the Score. Professor Van der Kolk wrote that, and many other experts in their field have written books on similar veins. So it's not just some hocus pocus thing that's been made up. The body truly holds on to everything that you've been through, and if you can't verbalize it, if you can't let it go in whatever way is suitable for you, then it's going to have that long-term impact. And we know that from the ACE studies, don't we?
Absolutely. And Dr. Nadine Harris Burke. I always get it the wrong way round. That's my dyslexia.
I might have got it round the wrong way as well, but who knows?
But she's a formidable woman, absolutely amazing. And she, as a doctor and practitioner, has done some very, huge research on this and the impact. And coming back to yourself, Chris, one of your biggest wellness tools has been your fitness and keeping well, hasn't it? Health and fitness.
I think it's more than that, Bev. I think when I was going through stuff and, you know, I had this anger, but I didn't know it was anger because all my emotions were suppressed, because that if I showed emotion, then I got further abuse. So you learn to hide it. But just because you're hiding it doesn't mean to say it's not deep seated or deep rooted. And you know, over time, you're either going to implode or explode. So part of my not knowing, therapy, grounding, whatever you want to call it at the time, was to go running, was to do exercise classes, was just to keep being productive, keep doing, keep being, keep, you know, have this mask on, don't let anyone in, you don't trust no one, just carry on, carry on, carry on. And then if no one knows about you, or they can't penetrate, you can't get hurt, you're never, you know, just don't be vulnerable, because that's a weakness. Okay. So all of those things that go into all of this makeup. So exercise was a way of me handling certain emotions, even though I didn't know it. Okay. But when I had my breakdown at the age of 30, I changed careers from being a management accountant to health and wellness. And that is when I started that recovery of my journey of recovery. But what I wanted to say, I also went from doing high impact exercise, which I was using now with hindsight as what's the word? A punishment almost, to more gentler exercises that I need, like my Pilates, like low impact exercise. I just felt that if I wasn't doing that, then there's no point in doing it at all. Whereas I've learned that to decrease your cortisol, to manage your stress, you need to be doing things that are in line and in tune with how you're feeling, rather than going against how you're feeling. Does that make sense?
Absolutely. And that's one of the things we always talk about when we say that word self-care. It sounds so simple, but it
But
takes a
it's
real
hard.
learning.
Yeah.
And it is hard. Once we've got it, it's like, why did it take me all those years? But
Yeah.
it does. You know, you're rewiring the messages that we've had internalized in our bodies. So, you know,
Yeah.
completely understand that.
But
So,
again, sorry, Bev, I
no,
just
no.
know with the exercise, obviously now I've done all my training in health and well-being and all different qualifications. I know how important exercise, let's cross that out, movement
Movement.
is for mental, physical and emotional health and well-being and long-term mental health. So I obviously verbalize that to all of my clients and to all of the survivors that I work with through the charity.
So, well, that's a great move on, because now we can move on to a bit more than what you do now outside of the podcast. So, you started a charity called Survivors of Abuse, and I actually remember when you launched it, but I couldn't come to the launch at that night.
I know, I was so sad.
But so we knew each other. And as people don't know, is you grew up in areas very close to me. We were like sliding doors all
Yeah,
through our lives. And you've launched this wonderful charity. You just started to get your fundraising after all these years. But what you offer regularly are workshops for other survivors. Can you tell us a little bit more about those workshops, Chris?
you mean the masterclasses?
Yes.
So anyone that's been through my course, they're in a group together, and as a new cohort of individuals go through the group, the 8-week course that I run, they get added to the group. So there's always new people coming on board. But we don't want to forget the people that began with me, like in 2017. You know, they've been with me a very long time. So the ongoing masterclasses and training that we offer is based on what their needs are. And you've actually come on board to present some of that training within the group. And basically what we do, isn't it, we just do a Zoom recording, we get people involved, it's then made private, and then it's uploaded so that those that couldn't make it can also access it at a later stage when they're ready to do it. So it's about keeping people on their journey of recovery, and not just forgetting about them after you've seen them maybe 5 years ago, 3 years ago, whatever the situation is, and just to know. So most of them won't even come into the group, but they've said to me, just knowing that that group is there is enough for them to carry on with their life and in their day to day. And I mean, and that's quite magic, really.
It's very much magic, because they've all been through your 8-week workshop as well beforehand. So they've got all these tools. But as we know, you go through the workshops and they're fantastic and they're lovely or fantastic light bulb moments, but it's the ongoing support, and peer-to-peer support is so valuable.
It so is. I mean, I know that I teach a lot of content on my 8-week calls because I want to give them as much as I can, so that when they go away and they're not on the 8-week calls, they can go back to it and refer to whatever it is they need to work on. So we cover a lot of content, but I always say to them, take on board what resonates with you and what's going to help you move forwards, and things that are going to serve you, i.e. fulfill you, make you at peace, improve your mental health, your physical health, whatever it is. But then let go of everything that just doesn't resonate with you at this time, or you don't agree with, whatever. I'm here to show you and teach you about boundaries, about choice, about responsibility, about trust, because they experience that over the 8 weeks by being part of the group and knowing that there's this onward peer-to-peer support and masterclasses based on what they say they need.
And that's amazing, because you've said it very quickly, but for anybody who's been through them, they are so valuable. And I will, that on its own, Chris, what you give back to other survivors is amazing, but it doesn't stop there. So they also have the WhatsApp support group.
You're making me feel knackered.
And you also occasionally meet up in London too.
Oh, so we do twice a year,
So you've got the support, which is fantastic, and you've got that there. Now tell us what else you do.
Right, so in a nutshell, most people that know me know this already, but we're talking about the people that have come across our podcast for the first time potentially. I spent 8 years being involved on the Victim and Survivors Consultative Panel at the Independent Inquiry into Child Sexual Abuse, aka VSCP at ICSA for short.
Okay, and VSCP, Victims and Survivors
Consultative Panel.
For the Independent Inquiry into Child Sexual Abuse. And you know what I'm like with an acronym, because otherwise everyone's sitting there going, what?
It's really funny, because I've already said that in full. Then I said the acronym, and then you repeated it. It's because the way our brains are, it's just like, oh, what did she just say? No, I didn't comprehend that.
And I said it because I know. And this is what's great, because our brains are different, and the
100%.
different ways we learn, we receive information. And also, you're more familiar than it to me. So I'm familiar with it, but I'm familiar as a person that went along and shared my story.
Yeah.
But you were involved in this, in the actual setup on behalf of victims and survivors, weren't you, with the Truth Project?
Yeah, definitely. So obviously before ICSA was set up, there was decades of campaigning by all different survivors and professionals and organisations that called for this inquiry. I would like to say I had a small wee bit part to play in that, a small bit. And then I got onto the inquiry as a VSCP member, and my role then was to advise the panel about what victims and survivors were saying on the outside, what I knew from my own experiences, and also how to set up a hearing project that would allow as many victims and survivors to come forwards and share their lived experiences as possible. So we set up the project called the Truth Project, and basically we did it from point of speaking about it to coming to the website to apply for it, or picking up the phone or writing in to apply, to the point of all of the admin, all of the paperwork that you received, to the location that you came to how that location was set up, to how the people that were working with you, the facilitators, what they would say, what they shouldn't say, how you should be treated, not treated. So the whole thing, we went through the whole pathway. Yeah. What support would look like before, during, and after. We did the whole lot. And then my sister and I, we went and walked it through with our own experiences to make sure it would deliver what we wrote down on paper, if so to say, you know, to make sure that it worked as we wanted it to work. We wanted everyone that came to the Truth Project to have the best experience they could, bearing in mind that some people have never spoken to anybody about what happened to them. Yeah, we wanted it to be completely different to if you went to the police, for example, and reported it. There, you're a number, you're a case. The Truth Project, you were the person. And you also were empowered not only to speak your truth, but also to share what would have made a difference when you was a child, young person, what would have made a difference. And then that was all fed into the inquiry's recommendations.
Absolutely. And to say, yes, I did give my story to the Truth Project. But not only that, it was the first time I'd spoken about my second abuser. And that consequently followed on with a police interview, which again, as you said, completely different. Now, without going too much into your personal life, because you are allowed a personal life, you were doing this, but you'd been through the court procedure as well and going through it at some of that time as well.
Yeah, I mean, this was where my trauma sort of like resurfaced, to be honest, because between 2016 and 2022, I went through the criminal justice system, fighting for justice. As a result of going through the Truth Project, I had the option of having, me and my siblings, of our lived experiences being reported to the police, and then the police come in and, like you, to do an interview to see if there would be a case to answer at the end of it. I spent 5 years going through that system. I know how re-traumatizing and re-victimizing it can be. I know the challenges, I know where people are let down, and I know where it can be improved. And I use all of that learning to make changes for the next cohort of people that are coming through. Because otherwise, it is so harmful that it could send you backwards. Okay, so there has been points in time when I was working at the inquiry, or for the inquiry as a consultant, I was going through the criminal justice system. I was being there for my siblings because I was driving the case forwards for all of my siblings, and I was running my health and wellness business as well outside of this. You know, keep going. But there was multiple times where I would literally just break down and just feel the intense anger, the intense injustice, the intense emotion of not being able to get the justice that I felt we should have, and what we needed and what we deserved. And in the end, to cut a long story very short, I went through the victim's right to review process right up to the top level of where you can go with it. Still got no further actions. We then found a pro bono lawyer and solicitor to take on our case, and they put this case together. But they said they couldn't afford to do it on all of the incidents of abuses for all of the siblings. So what we did, we cut it right down to one particular sibling, because that particular individual was mostly impacted by all of what we went through. And we felt that this sibling deserved to get what they needed. Nearly gave it away then, but everyone probably knows if they know me. Get what they needed, and we would all be happy with that, because pro bono lawyers and solicitors, you know, it's their time and it costs a lot of money. So they said they could only do specific things. So they brought this case, it went to the magistrate's court. He decided not to plead guilty, so then it got transferred to the Crown Court. So this is like a private prosecution. It's not called that, but that's what I call it, okay? A private prosecution. It was outside the criminal justice system. And then the CPS came along. They used a technicality of some kind in the law, and they basically shut it down. So if they turn up and don't offer any evidence, it shuts it down. It's a particular piece in the law. I don't understand it to this day. Whatever happened, I don't agree with it. I don't understand it. But long story short, our stepdad can never be retried. The case is closed. And even if someone came along and said they were abused by him, it would never be reopened.
And this is what's so important, because people don't realise about, you know, the legality of it and the evidence base that they needed. And like in your case, you know the impact, you know what's there. It's not that he's not guilty, it's just it can't be proven in a court of law now.
Right. Can you see how thick that file is?
Yeah.
1, 2, 3. This is my case, my family's case. I'm going to write a book on it one day, Bev, but at the moment, you know, I said I was shaking earlier.
Yeah.
I'm getting really angry.
Yeah.
So people want to know the impact. The impact of not getting justice can really make me flare up.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Sorry, let's get back on track.
Do not apologise, because this is what we do. This is about the nitty gritty. This is about the everyday reality. So take a breath. Right. Because what you do, you channel all that. And this is where, you know, I do admire everything you do, because you've gone forward. So you're still involved with ICSA, the independent inquiry, even though it's all been shut down. It's about
2 years ago.
Yeah. You're very passionate, and you very much keep that information going. And that's what's really fantastic. And there are lots of benches that in London, in different places, and you've highlighted these nationwide. You've highlighted these, and we can put a link under this for people to see, so people can continue the conversation. So you're very much active in that. But you're a speaker, and you've done a lot of things. So the last 2 years, you've been a speaker at the peer conference, haven't you?
Yeah, so after obviously ICSA shut its doors, because when inquiries close, that's it, finished. There's no holding the government to account. You just assume that the government will pick up the recommendations and just implement them. Nah, doesn't happen. Hence 2 years later, why I'm an activist on all of this, trying to push it forward with the hashtag Act on ICSA. So we'll come back to that. So the motivational speaking, it's just all about trying to get in front of the right audiences to raise awareness of the scale and the scope of abuse, you know, within the family home, within institutions, online, wherever it happens. It's happening everywhere. Anyone can be a perpetrator, anyone can be a victim. So after ICSA closed, then we started working with Anglia Ruskin University, ARU, and PEER, who are now known as IPRI. So they took us on as consultants for 18 months, and it's just come to a finish with them. And yes, so I spoke at PEER for 2 years on the trot, presenting and just highlighting the fact that we've had this £186 million inquiry. We've had over 7,000 survivors come forward to share what they'd gone through. We've got this, don't know if I've got it here, this really thick final report that's not been acted upon.
I've got one.
But why? So I've even had meetings last Friday with my own MP, Bev, whilst you're getting that down. I've had, because I gave mine to my MP last Friday, because I said everything you need to know about ICSA is in that report. Have a read. So he was a bit stunned. And even today, I've had a meeting with another MP. So it's about just keep driving it all forwards, and because it's so important to make sure that the government, cross-party, really understand that they need to do something. They can't just keep having conversations and can't just keep sitting on this.
Absolutely. And you've been to the House of Commons and House of Lords quite a few times, even in the last year, haven't you, Chris?
Yeah, I have. But again, it's all in the same vein. But as part of a system that works to protect children and young people, we need this whistleblower's arm. We need the whistleblowers that come forward to share what's going on, to be protected, and they're not actually protected at the moment. So the Parliament meeting that I was in last week, Whistleblowers UK meeting, I was sitting around this table with loads of different people, and it literally was someone from NHS, someone from energy renewal, someone from pre and postnatal care, someone from like being part of a fraud that had happened. Yeah, so they knew something was wrong. They spoke up, expecting their superiors, their organisations to back them, and they were discredited. Most of them discredited, lost their jobs, lost their careers, lost their reputations. And I'm thinking, one of my call outs across all social media is, why do you not speak up? If you know a rumour, if you see it, if you hear it, speak up. Yeah. And I've got this automatic thing in me, almost like a righteousness about this. If you heard a rumour, well, why didn't you speak up about it? Because that's how Jimmy Savile, for example, Hugh Edwards, all of those kinds of people got protected, yeah? But on the other hand of this, the flip side of this, when people do speak up, then this is what happens to them. So there's a juxtaposition here that needs to be sorted. And I just don't understand why it's taken so long for people not to realise that we're saying speak up, whether it's the infected blood scandal, Bev, whether it's the Horizon scandal, whether it's like vaccine harms from COVID, and I'm just leaving that there, yeah? But whatever it is, when you've got people speaking up, it's the same old, same old. They're discredited and reputations are trashed. Yet, every organisation has got a whistleblowers policy. Come forward and we will protect you. Yeah. So for me, any change in child protection going forward has to address protection for whistleblowers. And it shouldn't even be whistleblower. It should just be part of a system feedback loop. Things aren't working. This has gone wrong. Serious case review. Let's learn the lessons, but let's not just keep repeating the patterns of behaviour. Let's actually change stuff and let's get something different happening.
Absolutely. And thank you, Chris, because we can really hear your passion. And I know, for one, it is continual, your passion, and it doesn't stop. So wanted people to get a bit of an idea into what it is that you do outside of the podcast, because doing the podcast itself, getting guests, bringing them on, and the follow up is something. It's another part of making that change happen and raising that awareness.
Yes.
So, Chris, what would you like to happen now in your own life? What's your next step that you would like to happen next? What would you like to see or do?
You know what, Bev? What I would really love is for the ability to step away from all of this and just live a happy, healthy, content life. It ain't never going to happen, though.
No.
Because someone's got to fight for this stuff. And then there's many of us, I know that. I know I'm not the only one. I'm not putting myself on this pedestal and being arrogant about I'm the only one that can change the world. But it's deep within me. My inner child has been let down. its trust has been broken, it's been lied to, it's wanting to always speak up, stand up and demand change. Yeah. I never got that when I was little. I'm damn sure I'm going to do it as an adult. So this nice little idea of stepping away and living a happy, carefree, content life is just not me. But I often do think about it. But
Yeah.
I don't think no, it would never happen.
But you create those spaces. You create those spaces where you can, which is so important.
Have to.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So, Chris, we are coming to the end. You know what I'm like for timekeeping. So, is there one thing that you'd like to share, your last thoughts before we come to this? And thank you to the person who asked that question. What do you do outside the podcast?
So, I would like, you know what I would love? I would love to be a millionaire or billionaire because I could do so much good with that money. So much you would not believe, but I'm not. So half of my time is spent raising the funds to do the work that I do, because obviously you and I, we have to earn a living to keep the roof over our heads, put food in our bellies, blah, 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 like everybody else. Yeah. But that enables us then to give and do all of what we are doing outside of that for free. And we don't expect everyone to do it, but I do expect many people to do a lot more than what they're doing. Okay. They could just literally raise awareness by having the conversations with their friends, their families, being there to support a survivor when they come out, whether it's in the family or friend network or even at work. And also just to start bringing this more out into the open. Because me and you, we're sick to death of saying we need to start the conversation. No, the conversation's been happening for decades, even before we were aware of abuse.
Making the change now happen. It's right here.
Accountability, change. That's what I want, Bev. That is what I want.
Yeah, absolutely. And thank you so much, Chris. And you did that within just over the half hour, but that's fine. And thank you so much for sharing it, and for your passion, because your passion is what makes you as well. That's what drives you. So thank you so much. If you've got any further questions for Chris, you can email us on BreakingTheCycleToStepForward@gmail.com. We will add some of the links that Chris was talking about as well, especially for the ICSA campaign and for survivors of abuse. That is always underneath. And thank you very much, Chris. So just to say thank you for listening or watching. Please remember to subscribe or pass this on to someone who you think may be interested to hear more. And if there's any support that you would like to give, even financially towards survivors of abuse, or you're interested in finding out other ways of how to support, please contact us as well, because I know Chris will be more than happy to delegate.
100%. I know we've finished the podcast, but last night we had a trustees meeting. Today I've been writing my report for the statutory accounts. I've been joining marketing groups to try and raise awareness and funding. So it just never stops, Bev.
Absolutely. So everyone's welcome. So if you've got half a day available a month, please let us know.
Yes.
So
thank you.
On that note, thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye.